So now that the top 20 albums of the year has dropped, and if you haven't watched it already, it's right there. I know that my numbers usually this video is a lot lower, but I always love to do it because I want to shine the light on not necessarily those albums that I thought were the best, but the ones that surprised me the most. And this is also my chance to talk about those albums that I didn't necessarily connect with. Like, I don't like doing the whole worst albums, but I do want to at least talk about some of those albums that disappointed me. So I'm going to first start with the those that disappointed me, just to kind of get those out of the way, then talk about those albums that surprised me, and then I have a lot of albums on here that I forgot came out this year and only really reminded myself about them when I sat down to look through all the albums that have been out this year just to help compile these lists. So it's going to be a new entry. I think I did it last year and I had a lot of fun with that. So yeah, let's talk about those albums that disappointed me and why they did so. I'm not going to do like the, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll put the album here just so that people know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about it. And the first one is, unfortunately, Zio's True Waves. Zio took the crown for 2020 as being my best album of the year with their album Flower Tortoria, because I absolutely love that album, and I still listen to it today, and, it still gives me a lot of the good vibes. But this album... Oof, talk about a sophomore slump. I don't know what it was about this album. That charm, the multifaceted within the different genres of progressive rock just didn't quite hit. And because they were a little bit bigger and they had a little bit more star power behind them, I feel like they used that as their starting point rather than at a starting point of creativity. So they got a lot more, guest features on here, and they didn't quite know how to fold them into the vibes. And yeah, it was just a little bit of a disappointing album for me. It was one that left me a little sour. The same can be said about Southern Empire's album, and that was with their album Another World. When they first hit the scene with their self-titled work back in 2016, it was fine. It was fine. And then they followed it up with Civilization, which just blew me away. And I listened to that album a lot, even this year in preparation for this album. I don't know, man. There was something about this album. Maybe it was because the hype was so high for it, but I just felt like this one was fine. It didn't reach that same height that Civilization had. The epics didn't hit quite as hard, and the journey of the tracks just never really solidified into something that I really, really enjoyed. So yeah, then we come to an album that... we were starting to get with the upswing, and then I felt like this one took a nosedive, and that was the Flower Kings album of Look at You Now. It wasn't good. Since they've been back from their hiatus after Desolation Rose with Waiting for Miracles and By Royal Decree and Islands, I felt like each album was getting better. But Waiting for Miracles was one of the worst albums from them. I still kind of hold it in regard as their worst album. Islands was better. It had those longer stretches of music, but still didn't quite capture that spirit of the past. By Royal Decree was getting there. It's like, okay, we're back on track. It's starting to get a little bit better. It's a little bit shorter, but, songwriting ship is still all right. And then Look at You Now came out, and I'm like, we're right back for Waiting for Miracles. This was just... maybe it's the lack of the other individuals' input. It's basically just Roy Stolt right now. And this would have worked better as a solo project where he was just able to do what he wanted. I don't know. It just didn't work. And so now I'm kind of cutting my losses with the Flower Kings. And, we're going to see where we go from here. I'm not holding my breath for another good Flower Kings record at this point. One that really let me down was Lazuli, and their past couple of albums have really, really, they've made me really smile, and I've really, really loved them. Their last album of Dieterbaum, really, I love that record, but Onze was just... it was a letdown. They tried something a little bit new. They tried a little bit softer approach. Where there was moments that were like Radiohead and Steve Hogarth that I just didn't quite connect with. So yeah, this one was definitely a letdown. And the final one, because I wanted to do 5 of these, the final one that really let me down was Rick Wakeman's Gallery of the Imagination. because the 2020 album of The Red Planet is still one of his best works to date, and I still get a lot of joy when I listen to that record. It's so like grounded in that progressive rock landscape that I absolutely, absolutely love. But this one, it just was a bit of a dud. You know, there wasn't a whole lot for me to come back to. The motifs and the soundscapes weren't all that interesting. And I felt like this one, more than any other of his albums that he's put out recently, was treading ground. So, yeah. So those are my disappointments. Now let's talk about my surprises. These were albums that I didn't really expect a whole lot from, but still ended up really, really surprising me and really, really, you know, giving me more than I thought I was going to get with these albums. And the first one is Yes, Mirror to the Sky. Much like the Flower Kings, the last handful of albums that we've gotten from Yes haven't been great. You know, their one album, Heaven and Earth, and The Quest didn't really connect with me. I mean, Heaven and Earth was a complete dud. The Quest was a little bit better. At least here on A Mirror to the Sky, there was enough on here that made me really, really excited for. You know, I really love that first track of Cut from the Stars. I really love that they're playing with a little bit more epics on here, like Luminosity and the title track of Mirror to the Sky. I think we're starting to get back on track, and I would be fine with them putting out another album, you know, which is something I couldn't say after they put out The Quest. So, yeah. Another one that I was really excited for was Max Richter with Sleep, the Sleep Tranquility Base. I wasn't a huge fan of the Sleep big epic that he did. Like, it was a monster. It's like 8 hours long, with different movements and different items on there. And the last proper album that he put out, which was the recontextualizing or constructing of Vivaldi's Four Seasons, which he's already done, but this was like a reworking of the past album. I don't know. I fell off the Max Richter train, but the Tranquility Base of Sleep it brought me back. It really brought me back, and I was really excited for that. Another one that really surprised me was Unitopia's album of Seven Chambers. You know, I was surprised that Unitopia would be coming back after their very long hiatus, and having Chester Thompson on the drums. It provided such a powerhouse. There was a lot more energy to this band than I expected. You know, this was one of the better progressive retro prog bands that I've had in quite a while. So really surprised by that one. Same with Ilnur Solberg's solo album of 16. We had a lot of solo records within the past couple of years, like since lockdown, and most of them were varying degrees of fine. You know, I've never felt all that connected, but because Ilnur had so many guests helping him out on each of these tracks, each one, he knew exactly how to utilize and use those artists to get the sounds that he was looking for. And this one really pushed him out of the comfort zone on a number of these tracks. And I still come back to this and I still get a lot of, you know, really good times out of it. And the final one that I wanted to talk about was Explosions in the Sky with their album End. Yeah, I mean, the last handful of Explosions in the Sky albums, again, just didn't really do anything for me. But End really showcased they still have enough gas in the tank to write some amazing music. Now, when I did my review, I said that this was probably going to be their last album, but some people have said that, no, this was just a concept of endings. But I'd be okay if this were their last album, you know? But if they want to put out more albums, I am more excited for it. They took that energy and they took that essence of the Explosions in the Sky thing and ran with it, and I really, really appreciate that. So those were the 5 albums that really surprised me. Those were 5 albums that really disappointed me. Now we've got 7 albums that I completely forgot about. In my head, gone in a minute. First one, unfortunately, it was Riverside's Identity. It was here and gone. I completely forgot that they put out this album. Same with Jethro Tull's Rock Flute. I like this one a lot more than the Zealot Gene, but it wasn't enough for me to come back to, and again, completely forgot this was here. Same with Joseph Part 1, The Dreamer from Neil Morse, and like I spent a full week entrenched in this album, but I don't know, it just didn't have any lasting impressions, and maybe it's just because it's the first half of the bigger album that is Joseph. And same with Motorcycle, with their album Yay. Very somber, you know, much more acoustic in approach. You know, not the big bombastic sounds that we got from Motorcycle in the past, but yeah, another one that I was like, oh yeah, they put out that album this year. Same with Mystery, with Redemption. Again, completely forgot this album came out this year, and I'm a huge fan of Mystery. And Camelot, The Awakening. I thought this one came out last year. Clearly, it didn't make a huge impact for me. And the one that, gun to my head, I would have told you it came out last year, was Catatonia, with their album Sky Void of Stars. Again, another album that came out earlier this year that made no impression in me. You know, I listened to it, I'm like, yep, still making depressive metal music. Cool. And then it just left my brain. Absolutely left my brain. So those were 7 albums that just never really found perch in me. And those were my surprises and disappointments of 2023. And I think that's all I've got for you guys. If you didn't see this in my best albums of 2023, I am going to try a different format moving into 2024, which is putting out album reviews less frequently, but having one video a month where it's a roundup of those albums that I didn't have a lot to say, and I'm not like trying to get enough out for an album review. And it'll allow me to cover a lot more albums this way as well. So part of the reason why I started this channel was to let people know of albums coming out, and I'm really hoping that this satisfies that, while also allowing me the time and space to gush about those albums I have a lot more to say about. So I'm going to try that for 2024, and we're going to see how that goes, because I'm hoping that I can get to 20,000 subscribers by 2025. You know, I've been doing this for almost 10 years, and I'm hoping to get to 20. You know, I'm really hoping to get to 20 after 10 years. So I'm hoping that this will help. And one of the ways that that's going to help is if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. Consider ringing that bell so that you get notified for all of the different videos that come out. And consider checking out some of my podcasts. Maybe I'll put them on this channel rather than having them on their own podcast channel. I'm hoping to start up a new one in the new year. I'm not going to say anything about that one because I'm not sure if it's actually going to see the light of day. But go check out The Metalhead, which is a meditative podcast. We're making it more progressive rock rather than just straight metal. But yeah, that's now on YouTube. My friend Grace and I have a lot of fun with that one. And yeah, I think I'm going to set the sun on Quid Pro Quo as well. It was a lot of fun, but also it takes a lot of work. And I needed to give something up so I can continue doing other things. So anyway, that's a little bit of an update from me. I'm sure I'll make a bigger video about that in the new year where I talk about those albums that I most anticipate for 2024. But until then, thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.